Hi everyone and welcome. We are flipping the script today, and instead of us presenting to you, you are directing the conversation today. This is your Ask Us Anything session. Yeah, we got some great topics already from the questions you have sent in to us. But as this is a real live session, for sure, we are also interested in your questions that coming up to you right now. Feel free to drop your questions to the chat and we will pick up them from there and include it into our conversation. So what you've said, a short introduction. Normally I think that everybody knows you, but I don't know if this time we should make some exception, and maybe Andreas.
Then I start. I'm Andreas Kunz, like the two guys next to me, also with UI5 from the very beginning, now in the central kind of architecture role. Like you, Peter?
Yeah, the same counts to me. I'm Peter Muessig, also in this central architecture role for SAP UI5, being there since the beginning. And this not counts for you? From the beginning, yes, but not in the architecture role.
Yes, yeah. Stefan Beck, I'm now the head of product management for UI technologies, and handing over Margot in this brilliant Christmas golden phoenix. I'm so jealous.
So my name is Margot Wollny. I'm first of all your moderator for today, and in addition I'm also product manager for OpenUI5 and SAP UI5, especially in the area of SAP UI5 framework. So then start the conversation. I think Stefan, to kick us off with what many consider the most anticipated question is SAP UI5 2.0. Can you give us the official update and on the current status, but also maybe if already some plans when it will be released?
Yeah, so a very much expected question, and let me start first in what is the current status. So we work intensively on it. So we have also internal dependencies slightly outside of the framework, like the Fiori Launchpad in the ABAP stack, and also, let's say, in the framework, and like the Fiori Elements as consumer. And we currently are basically on the final mile to enable the 2.0 end-to-end in the ABAP stack. And what is the goal, so that we have a kind of an end-to-end stack available? Then we will do kind of realistic measurements, analysis, and can also then see how the system behaves and how the performance will be. So what is a kind of a focus topic that we are looking at? You can imagine that we have SAP products that consume SAP UI5, and not all can be switched to version 2.0 immediately. And we currently look intensively in this kind of cross scenarios. What happens if the Fiori Launchpad starts with a version 2 application, then we load a version 1 application? What kind of penalty can be expected? The same vice versa. What if version 2 is running and then a version 2 application comes around as the next scenario? What happens with deep links? So there's quite some investigations ongoing. So this is somehow the purpose. Overall, the good news is that we are, from a technical enablement, on the final mile. And maybe not sure whether Peter wants to add a bit into these technical details before then I come to the question of the questions with regards to the timelines.
Because one thing which is really also something which is, I think, really essential to keep in mind is that UI5 2.0 is not really so disruptive like you would imagine from a 2.0. It's a long promised thing where we made some expectations. We deprecated APIs, and made that clear that at some point in time this should be not used anymore. This deprecate APIs is kind of legacy we are taking now since a long time in our releases. And we have really bad practice APIs, which we also deprecate. We will also kindly ask you really long time ago to get rid of that. And if you followed all this, let's say, instructions we gave over the last couple of years already, then your application should be already best practice like, And when it's best practice like, this also means that it continues to work with 2.0. There are a few things at the end, for sure, you need to know there is also in the meantime the linter available, which you can check at the end, the applications. But I think there are a lot of things already which helps you to prepare yourself to get ready for 2.0. And it's not really completely disruptive in a way. It's just getting rid of legacy. And this legacy is long time known. And then this should be also not a big hurdle at the end to go. So because always people fear major version change is really dramatic and the drama starts. Yeah, but it's not really like that the case, especially when it comes to, let's say, framework pieces. There is work to do, as Stefan said, for sure on the FLP layer when it comes to FLP services or Fiori Elements things. So in these layers we are working on also to make it as comfortable as possible. But there also guidelines will then or are available then for that, which helps you to get your code base migrated towards 2.0. But yeah, that's what I would like to add. Best practice apps keep running to this statement we keep.
Mm-hmm. And maybe then adding directly into this one, also in the UI5 linter, we added a feature, a kind of an autofix feature. And at least if you look into the internal applications, we have now more than 40% of the findings of the linter that can be fixed automatically. Also, this is something that you can already try and prepare your applications. Now, the timeline questions. Honestly, the final decision can only be made after we have all these measurements. The measurements are then planned during the first quarter next year, and then we decide about the delivery date when we can see the real impact that we have on customer systems. And currently, I can say we prepare for a delivery around end of Q2. But as said, it's now subject to this kind of analysis and then the final agreement with the LOBs, whether they basically accept the impact. And as said, the good news, maybe, yeah, not sure whether Peter wants to add, but the good news is already right now that the figures that we have now look quite promising and we can be optimistic. But as said, yeah,
maybe to quickly say, so what we really notice is that what I also said in several UI5Con keynotes with moving to the modular core and having asynchronous bootstrapping capabilities, we are now able to do things much earlier. And with doing things much earlier, we can, let's see, give the feedback to the user starting in the UI5 application or the Fiori Launchpad that it feels really like something is continuously moving. And this gives a complete different impression to that what we had in the past. And with that, we now also see real good figures where also partially we get a 70% earlier first contentful paint, and this is really impressive. And now let's check what this means in detail. This is I don't want to talk now about everything there. Maybe also then that's something where we can come up in the future with a real show.
Yeah. But let's say maybe last word to it, Margot. There were also kind of alignments within SAP, and maybe one thing to share that's as it is also relevant for you. So in an ideal case, let's say in a decent time after our next long-term support release, we could switch. And then as a compromise to the internal applications, we have also said that we will bring 2 more versions in the version 1 stack. So even if we would deliver version 2, we would come with 2 half-yearly versions of improvements of the V1 stack that it keeps up to be visual compatible to give you as customer on customer side in our SAP applications more time. So this is basically all we can say currently. And back to you.
I just wanted to say you're trying to convince the community to go on 2.0, but somehow I think they are rather eagerly awaiting for it and not need this convincing message. But as you can see, still there are some other people around using SAP UI5 who needs this proof of concepts, and I think that's what we are currently really working on, so that everybody is with us on this road, because we can only tackle this if everybody is.
Yeah, at the end, it's about showcasing that the performance improvements are true, that the complexity is less, that the migration is easy. And if all this then comes together, I think then there is no need for any convincement anymore.
That's what I believe. So,
so
crossing finger next year. Then another question, and it's great to see that Hani, who raised this question, is also with us today. With the transition to cloud ERP and S4, as well as fit to standard, the topic of extension concepts is becoming increasingly important in the Fiori area. We are also receiving more and more inquiries about how certain standard application can be extended. As we also have our own products in the healthcare sector, this topic is also very important to us. So as a preparation, so the specific question is now, is it possible to create adaptation project for SAP UI5 standalone apps? So also not applications that are started from FLP or so, but started up with index.html and then also call them up via index.html. So is this possible with adaptation project?
Good. I have to admit, I also have to ask the expert on this. And the good news is that it is possible on the ABAP stack, ABAP-based cloud applications. We have a code snippet prepared that you have to add. And this basically will enable your standalone applications on the ABAP stack to be enabled. So this one will do the job.
Cool. Good. I also didn't know this. I was also wondering if you really need some FLP or so, but it's good to know that this is also possible for standard application, because I also believe, especially as this is like our primary extension concept, so it's really important that it also works with standalone applications.
Yeah.
But I can see in the chat there that there was a follow-up question on our 2.0 topic, or a bit related to it, which says that what UI5 version is coming with S/4HANA 2025, and can we use multiple versions with the new UI5 repo coming along with S/4HANA 2025, such as UI5?
It's 126, 136, isn't it? Just double check. Yes. Yeah. I think it's 136.
Yeah.
And yes, so to speak, the repo can come with several versions. I now have to be careful.
I think only several major versions, but not minor versions, right?
Yeah, major versions. And now I'm not sure, as 2.0 is not yet in this stack, whether they enable this feature. Technically it could, but I have to be careful. I have to follow up now. So the repo can and is prepared obviously for this. It could just be that it's not yet enabled.
But we will definitely have not minor versions or patches in parallel. It will be mainly about the major and the 1 and 2 major versions.
So in principle, if it's coming up next year and we are delivering it on premise, this or with 2025, then this could be enabled. Now it really comes up with this. But did we answer then which version is coming with
136.
36, okay.
So we believe that this is the
one. No, it is.
Then another question actually only came up today. Then you all also got this email today where Holger, who unfortunately is not here, so maybe you shouldn't answer it, but he was asking about the current status of the Placeholder API that was demonstrated in some of our former UI5 lives. Was it ever officially released for public consumption? I must confess, it's only released for internal users, especially with Fiori Elements. And at that time, because actually I was even putting this on our agenda for the UI5 Live, because I was not aware of it. But on the other hand, what we also discussed there, it was also why we presented it was to see how much interest is in this topic. And actually, beside of this one voice, we never get ever some feedback on this, and that's why we lowered the priority on this topic a bit.
Interesting it would become now also with the new, let's say with the asynchronous bootstrapping capabilities, as we could now display also things much earlier, then a placeholder makes even more sense to have something meaningful being displayed. And maybe also with these kind of things and the voice of the community asking and demanding that feature, this could become also more relevant.
That's again the question, like if there is really some demand. On the other hand, it's also one reason why we stopped a bit on this is for Fiori Elements. It's quite easy because you have like this fixed layouts and floor plans, and so where you really know how it will look like. If you have some freestyle application, so it becomes much more complex. And there you have like really go on control level with this placeholders. Also there we need like then the concepts of UX, where we have to convince all the UX working with us on these things. So really here to have the use cases and so on, to have maybe also some front runs would really help with this topic. So if you're interested, then
I remember also that tool in the core team, where they developed this kind of generator where you could generate a kind of
But this also was some best guess.
Yeah, it was.
Need really real designs and stuff like that. So, and there was also this follow-up question: are there plans for UI5 controls to natively generate placeholder markup, potentially including auto-generated placeholder HTML? There, this I can share. We did not play around with this yet. So, because also this is really not some easy thing. So there really you have to think where this happens and how to take care of this and so. So it's not an easy topic. But as said, like currently there was not much priority on this because we are lacking here of any people really asking for this feature. I still believe that having placeholders is really a cool concept, and I would love to see there more. But let's see what's the future brings.
We have to see. I'm just thinking loud, so to speak. It's obviously not a plan, but doesn't this look like an AI task? So if you have a running application to create something that looks alike, it's a bit. So so this maybe we can also give the design of the placeholder to our customers and partners to know how the applications look like. So we maybe should not make it overly complex and just offer it as an API. But as you suggested, let's think about it.
Yeah, you should look in that direction for the MCP.
Then maybe do some discovery around it, and then see how it goes.
Do you have any thoughts on this, Andreas?
Not yet. So this idea is a bit new, but I'm always happy for new ideas. So why not? We could investigate.
Yeah. Good. Then a question that also comes up quite often is there's a common perception among customers that all new SAP application must be developed using SAP Fiori Elements here and around. Could you clarify if this is SAP's official stance or if Freestyle custom SAP UI5 development remains a fully valid and recommended approach?
Let me start. Let me put it into the context of from SAP's perspective. There's a big initiative also made public externally that is called See It First. And this is around SAP having many different products built ourselves, coming with acquisitions. And that from a customer perspective, the consistency of these applications is not as its best, at least not always as its best. And there's a big initiative to strive for this UX consistency. And when you strive for consistency, Fiori Elements is the ideal means if you have redefined, reused flow plans, and then it automatically gives you that consistency. This is now the reason why, when listening to the SAP communication, the SAP internal communication, the priority is clearly on Fiori Elements. On the other side, also at SAP, we have applications, specific applications for dedicated use cases that look totally different. And for these applications, the Freestyle is obviously the way to go, and the Freestyle approach is still valid. And now we were talking about the two extremes, but it has not necessarily to be the two extremes, because our clear goal is that we make this, let's say, world between Freestyle and Fiori Elements in a way seamless, that you can cross it and go seamlessly from the left to the right-hand side. And the thing that we released, or that the Fiori Elements released, I think 2-3 years ago, is called a flexible programming model. And there's also a new entry point in our demo kit. You can have a look into that one. And the flexible program model is kind of a breakdown of the Fiori Elements floor plans into building blocks. And you can now take a Fiori element application and then move towards Freestyle in adding your Freestyle coding, exchanging building blocks, adding complete Freestyle sections, or you can take a Freestyle application and then where it makes sense to add your building blocks that can consume the metadata enriched OData services. So all this is totally valid, and you can also see from our bigger investment into this flexible programming model that both scenarios are totally valid, and you have to decide based on your use case. Maybe not sure. There's something.
At the end, the decision for Fiori Elements, in my opinion, is clearly if you have a metadata-driven backend or they have OData services behind the scenes, then it allows you a very easy and very lightweight way of, or not lightweight, but a very easy way at the end to bring that to the end user, this data, by having a lot of patterns and stuff available, which comes out of the box. And at the end, you always have to imagine this reduces at the end your TCO, your cost of ownership of code. And this is the option to save a bit of your later time to do work on that if you need to adopt that, and need to follow other things, But the freestyle way of doing things, this is, let's say, at the end, always the foundation, even of the Fiori Elements, and that will always be the thing which is there available. I think that's also the main thing we are working on. At the end, the freestyle way is always available.
Just because I think that this is a good follow-up question on this, is another misunderstanding in the community is also there, or understanding or misunderstanding is what we have to clarify here is about the perception about the OData V4 model in the community. There is a common perception that the OData V4 model is primarily recommended for SAP Fiori Elements applications and not for Freestyle custom SAP UI5 development. And I think it makes sense to clarify our official recommendation regarding OData V4 usage outside of SAP Fiori Elements. So I don't know if any one of you wants to say something about this. Otherwise, I can also start, give there the answer, because I can really say that the first time when I heard this, seeing this comment in the community, I was really, really astonished, because I think from our side, it was clear that OData V4 is a protocol that we want to support. And there was this new model because there were reasons why we decided to have an additional model next to OData V2. But for sure, it was never our idea to make it exclusively for Fiori Elements. And I think that comes really perfectly with the questions before. As we support as much Freestyle as Fiori Elements, we also recommend OData V4 for normal SAP UI5 applications. And also saying this, what I can also share here is that for the OData V2 model, we more or less finalize now the scope we had in mind for OData V2, and now we will put all our efforts into OData V4. So we actually do not plan any further features for OData V2. So definitely our recommendation is wherever you can adopt OData V4 and go with this model in future.
Yeah, maybe I directly continue with a not asked question, because just to mention, we now talked about OData V4, we talked about OData V2, but there's still a JSON model instance that also allow you to make use of SAP UI5. So all these alternatives are really valid, and we do not restrict ourselves to only one way.
Yeah, and also not doing things exclusively for something, but we have always the full framework in mind.
Exactly.
Peter, Andreas? No.
Nothing to add.
But Andreas, I don't know if you have seen this in the chat, but there is also a question I think that perfectly fits to you. There is the question, are you planning to offer a migration script to move from SAP UI5's vanilla to SAP UI5 TypeScript?
Yeah, the community in the chat already started to help each other, but still I want to give an answer here. As Marian has pointed out in the chat already, there is currently work ongoing in the UI5 MCP server to provide a convert to TypeScript functionality that would help you when you are using an AI agent tool and using this MCP server. This is basically bringing over the functionality that you have maybe already seen in SAP Build Code, in Business Application Studio, where we have contributed to tool also migrate TypeScript or something functionality that you could use there. Now with the MCP server, it's planned to offer the same thing for an AI-driven development, also for general use in whatever environment you are. Of course, beyond that, where the AI does the heavy lifting and we only give some guidelines, we could, of course, also think about like real programmatic conversion, which is then more reliable, but of course more work, cover all the cases, but they could like help each other, those approaches. So we could also continue work after this feature in the MCP server or improving this feature in the MCP server to provide also something traditional, not AI based, that would be also helping there. But there's no work ongoing on this part.
I don't know, did you cover then also like the question, second question on, are you planning to add an SAP UI5 TypeScript library template to the template wizard? I guess they mean the easy UI5?
In Easy UI5, there we have a UI library and also TypeScript library template. I think the question is probably, because of that, it's probably about SAP Build Code, Business Application Studio. And there we are not exactly the persons developing or deciding on the wizard. And I don't think there are plans.
In Build Code, what you can do definitely is also to use Easy UI5. There was also recently a development happening that Easy UI5 again works. So I got this week information from from the Application Studio guys that they worked on enabling the ESM-based Yeoman generators now that they run. And as we converted the Easy UI5 a while back to ESM because of the dependencies, it didn't run anymore in Business Application Studio in this Yeoman UI, but it ran definitely in the command line. So inside the console in Business Application Studio, you should still be able to install Yeoman, or Yeoman is present because they are using it for templates in general, but you could install the generator Easy UI5, and then you could also use our templates with TypeScript or for applications or for libraries.
That should be the UI5 TS library.
The TS app and the TS lib.
TS lib or
library, TS library. You will see that in the
so
list.
It's not probably coming so soon in the wizard itself that is built in, but you can use it in there.
Yeah, but I hope that with that enablement they send me, if this comes then soon, that you can then, if the Easy UI5 generator is installed then in the system, it also appears again in the Yeoman UI.
There's another question in this chat we had already at UI5Con, but I think as you're just here to answer questions, we can repeat this question maybe here and answer it as well. Is about the web components and if it's planned to rebuild existing controls, for example, the SAP M library with web components.
To rebuild. So what we have is we build, let's say, the most important bread and butter controls as web components in the open source library, UI5 web components. And one of our goals is for sure to put that back into the SAP UI5 offering, that you can use these components as UI5 controls seamlessly. This is also what we had in the last keynote and the keynote before to explain how this is working. So we are going forward with that. But the biggest issue is that the web components, they have, let's say, a slightly different API. Also, it's pretty similar, but there are some differences in that. And they can't, and also from a feature perspective, they are not implementing all the features we have developed the last 10 years. For our M controls, and therefore this is not 100% equivalent and cannot be 100% exchanged with that. But one of our ideas is that they are available as a new library aside the web components, and then we have to see what it means for the future direction, how we can also phase out the M controls potentially. But this is not decided yet. It's more idea at the end for us. It's also about thinking to reducing the effort to develop 2 stacks of components or controls.
Let me add. I think it's very unlikely that the replacement is happening for pure technical reasons, and some of the big reasons, or the biggest reasons, was already mentioned by Peter. What is the full compatibility? Because you don't want to offer all the kind of deprecated, unwanted features again in web components to ensure compatibility for applications. So this is one topic. On the other hand, if you just go back, so we had in the past, we had a library, some of you might recall it, that was called Common Controls with the gold reflection theme. And then there was a bigger brand and design change. And then we removed the Commons library and brought in the SAP library. Then it was responsive and all these capabilities. And if we look again into the future, it's not so unlikely that a kind of a bigger design change will come. We currently see a lot of new, let's say, demanding needs from the business perspective. So we see the AI integration into our application itself. Then we see how can agents collaborate with our software? How can you observe agents? And it might be that we discover kind of new paradigms to solve this and to address this. And if such a bigger thing happens and you anyhow do an overhaul of your complete design, then coming up with new controls is likely. And if this happens, they will be built as web components.
But
so this is kind of the
Stefan, that is a good
potential
point.
option, yes.
Yeah, that is a good point what you bring up, because there are already web components in our delivery.
Yeah.
So for example, Shellbar, which has been developed following the new guidelines, new styling guidelines for the Launchpad and for other products. This is using web components in the meantime. Yeah. So behind the scenes, we have already web components in our delivery and make use of them to have the development only once. And in future, this will also maybe count for the AI components, which will definitely not be developed.
Count for them, yes.
Not developed as UI5 controls. They will be just put back in UI5, available as UI5 controls, but technically they are web components. Yeah, it's just for you as a developer, you won't notice that. Yeah. And this is also how we partially do that already. So for newer components, newer UI controls, we bring them in the stack as web components, and everything which is there and available from the past, we need to see what we do with that.
There is actually a quite good question as a follow-up, because here's someone who is just about to create a new library for UI5, for the UI5 framework with custom controls. And he's wondering if he should create these controls as web components or as classic UI5 controls. And what's now the recommended way to create new custom controls?
Good. Let's say for us, Peter answered the question. I just hand over to you in a second. So as said, for SAP, everything that we built for ourselves in a completely new way, we build it as web components. So for us as SAP, strategy is clear. Now, maybe for you,
this is because of the efficiency, because we have to build it for many stakeholders using different stacks or components.
Exactly.
But when you build your own library, I think it totally depends on who is going to use this library. So if it's definitely used only in SAP UI5 or UI5 context, then there is no bigger use of using web components right now, I would say.
It brings also additional complexity with it, that you need to develop the web components. You need to put that back into the UI5 control library to ship it at the end or use it seamlessly. But then also you have to take care that everyone is using the proper tooling. But it's a bit dependent on your scenario. As Stefan and Andreas said, this is really, it depends a bit on for what target environment you want to build them. If you want to have a bigger reuse, web components, reuse in case of different technologies, web components are the answer. If it's just for OpenUI5, SAP UI5, the UI5 controls are fully sufficient.
I was just wondering, but maybe that's, how to say, ketzerisch to ask, but is there also, from technical perspective, that there's an advantage in web components, from the concept?
Yeah, So the web components, so technically, the web components have some smart neat features in there. which allow you, for example, to do also during, let's say, during the life cycle of the control, some lazy stuff, lazy require of dependencies. Things like this is a bit more complicated to do with the UI5 control lifecycle and the UI5 control framework, because there it's more a synchronous contract in most places. And I think there are some small advantages on that, also from the way how the renderer is written. The web components, they have a declarative renderer using JSX or TSX, whereas the UI5 controls have this imperative way of rendering using this, how is the name for that? The syntax, I forgot it always, the DOM
DOM patching.
Yeah, DOM patching like syntax, what you use. So you have, yeah, it's at the end, it's a bit more, it's a bit more verbose to write it. But that's a technical thing.
Then maybe complete different questions now. There was the
incremental DOM. Sorry.
Incremental DOMs.
That was what I'm looking for.
Finalize this one at least.
Sorry.
So do you have any plans to unwrap the generated code from the SAP.UI.define respective require construct? Because that, along with copying the UI5 artifacts from a tilde.UI5 only during UI5 build, is preventing us of industry standard JavaScript, TypeScript tooling like Jest for actual unit tests or other builder like EaseBuild or Vite.
At the end, this is a bit like also what is the advantage of the web components? They are built with industry standard modules, the ES modules nowadays. Yeah, in UI5 we are using AMD-like modules. We have our own module loader built for that, also due to the history. But this module loader also still brings advantages we don't see at the moment in ES modules. Our way of preloading is a construct which won't work with ES modules, so that you can just put ES modules in a preload bundle and then load it via the preload bundle, and later if the module loader is requiring that module, this is not possible with ES modules like that. You always need to foresee the bundles at build time, but we also know that for sure, if you go to the industry standard with ES modules, we can benefit from the development which happens in the community out there. And also a lot of things are at the moment already possible. Import maps are there, which is also one thing what we have in UI5 with the resource routes, that you can later load, let's say, a module or a library then from somewhere else and then define from where this is loaded at runtime. So this was an essential thing which was missing in the beginning for the ES modules and made it hard to think about the usage of the ES modules, at least for OpenUI5 and SAP UI5. But at the end also, the whole thing requires a complete transformation. And still, as we have a lack of a feature completeness from ES modules, so that what we know from our AMD-like syntax as of today, it's not immediately possible to. So, but we have that in mind. So believe us. So we are talking actively. We are talking actively and internally. Also, we are discussing this really seriously to go in that direction, because also, like you said, we believe in that if we have industry standards used, and we see that with the web standards everywhere where we switch to web standards, we really benefit extremely from that, what's happening in the community. And it's really a great booster at the end for innovation for us.
Now that we are at the end of the year, what are SAP UI5's or OpenUI5's key strategic focus area for next year, and maybe with what features we can or the community can expect for?
One was mentioned, or Stefan said in the beginning, so this we can shorten a bit of time.
I would also say one highlight we had at the very beginning, I guess.
And it should not be the running gag always, yeah. So 2.x is really the thing we are working for. And
good. Let's continue. I already also spoiled some other parts. So let's say the integration of AI capabilities will definitely be something that is in focus for this year, or for the next year. Sorry. And there's also something then bigger for the next year that we have to prepare. So also stay tuned. There will be investments how to bring best the AI capabilities into the applications, and also to how to bring the AI capabilities best to the end users and to you, maybe even without building applications completely, maybe putting micro UIs flexibly together, depending on the situation that the AI or agents detect. So here we are intensively discussing, also building prototypes. So this is something, some kind of functional area that we are intensively looking into that one. And maybe from my side, the last one I'm going to talk about, already mentioned it a bit, that this UX consistency, this focus of getting the SAP products aligned, will also get into next iteration where we improve one or the other control to be able to embrace more SAP products and then have a more consistent situation overall. So currently it looks like mainly the shell in work zone and FLP will be affected, plus then the AI controls inside the applications. But also here we currently still work on the plans, what we can fit into next year. And maybe for the technical parts, rather to
I just wanted
colleagues.
to say, maybe we should ask, like, as they are like stakeholders for us from product management, so what are the wishes from our architects that we should put on our roadmap?
Yeah, at the end, I said it already. So working on this 2x and get it out of the doors is really something to get rid of our legacy a little bit. This is something we should definitely work on from my perspective. So this is a thing which I think I push now since 2016 with the evolution project starting in the beginning and now getting closer to all the things, also connecting web components back into the programming model. Seriously, this is all something which I think this, showing how all the things are interoperating properly. This is really my goal to see behind that. And then from there on, for sure, we can then also take, let's say, the next steps like ES modules and stuff like that to do the evolution even further. And I think, Andreas, you?
Yeah, definitely things like this. Everything that makes developers using UI5 or writing UI5 applications happier, anything like that is definitely in scope. Also with coming back to AI, with AI support with the MCP server, which is continuously looked into to develop new stuff like the TypeScript migration that I've already mentioned, but also other features in this area, better documentation search, something specific like manifest validation or so are things that we are looking into, at least in the MCP server area, but also making AI and SAP Joule available to the end users in UI5 applications like so is Joule, and the applications can talk to each other better. There's definitely something also in the works right now. So lots of AI stuff and developer satisfaction stuff, I would say.
And maybe we can also work a bit on TSX when we have some free time.
Finally,
The question is, I just wanted to say, like, for me, it's only maybe as a running gag from UI5 as well. My goal, at least for next UI5 is that we close this 11 years old issue on GitHub and provide the bindable filters in the framework. I'm currently working
Is Robin
on
in the car?
Unfortunately not, but maybe he will see it. So we are currently working on a concept and I hope it looks quite good. So I'm quite optimistic currently that finally we find a solution for that, and with this improve maybe also developer experience in UI5. So, but with that, I think we are more or less at the end. I had great fun actually.
At the end, we should ask if you like that. Maybe you drop us some hint in LinkedIn, wherever, then this would be great to see if you like that format. Maybe then we can also do that more often like that. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, if you really liked and enjoyed it, as I did actually, maybe you can recommend it to your friends also and leave some comments on LinkedIn or somewhere else. Because as I said, I really enjoyed it. I really liked the questions. Even great to get more of it. And I think it also brings some transparency to our community, what we are doing, and to see how open we are. So hope same applies to you, that you had fun with us. So
cool. Happy holidays, guys. See you then next year.
Bye.